Oh yeah, Primos. Primos is a show where controversy surrounding it is more interesting than the actual show itself. The first major controversy was how the show used Oye Primos in its theme. Spanish speakers in the room know that the grammatically correct way to say this would be Oigan Primos, because this is plural, as in multiple cousins. Personally, I wouldn't care much since spoken Spanish can be very different from written Spanish, because, well, that's how languages work. It's a bit easier to change people's vocabulary because you're not forced to speak grammatically. This also takes place in America. We have a lot of Spanish speakers in America, so it's only natural for the language to break apart and reform into something new, a very unique dialect of Spanish. I mean, especially when you're influenced by the changes of society and culture. So, when pointed out, Tater's voice actress, rather than say, oh, Tater doesn't speak Spanish very well, that's normal for children in the diaspora, there was this whole diatribe about colonialism and how she doesn't care about the Spanish language and how the people who are complaining are essentially grammar, or can't use that term anymore because I'll end up getting demonetized. Let's just say alt-right spelled like this on the screen. That's not dumping gasoline onto a fire, that's dumping thermite and chlorine trifluoride onto the fire. But enough about the Twitter hate machine and the millions of YouTube videos that probably exist calling out this show, picking it apart every single frame by frame even before it even aired. Let's talk about the Latin American communities. Every single Latin American I have talked to about this has either been apathetic or they say LOL and shrug it off. They think it's a parody of how they live or something like that. Now, to preempt any attempts at saying this is just what a white person thinks Hispanic people live like, no, it isn't. This is actually based on the creator Natasha Klein's own childhood experience. In fact, the cousins are actually fewer in amount than what she actually had to deal with as a child. I think she said, somewhere I read ages ago, she had to deal with over 20. Meanwhile, this is obviously not 20. It's a stereotype that Hispanics/Latinos live in large families, but this is based off the childhood of an actual person who falls into that stereotype. I don't think the solution to the prevalence of stereotypes within media is to simply deny them and do the opposite and assume anything with the original stereotype is tainted. You're just making a new stereotype, a new status quo to deal with. I think it's better to show a large range of niches and scenarios you could put these characters in for representation, but that's not a conversation for now. That's a conversation for how stereotypes affect media or whatever. Let's see if I ever make that video. But back to Primos. As a whole, I got through the controversy of it all. Now, the show itself, I think it's just very, very dull. It's basically an animated sitcom akin to The Loud House or Los Casagrandes. However, I only blame these shows in particular for being the animated sitcom and bringing the animated zaniness to the live action sitcoms. After all, my day was the golden age of kid sitcoms or kidcoms for both Disney Channel and Nickelodeon. So when you try this out on a larger scale and in animated form, it just doesn't come off as clever or funny or entertaining to me. Everything just sort of runs together after a while. It's not a mortal sin against animation, Disney, or anything, but it's just not special. Maybe the show resonates with someone out there and they'll make their own Primos show like 30 years down the line, but honestly, this show isn't for me. Those are just my thoughts. Please consider liking, subscribing, tipping the channel on Ko-fi. This is Cyril signing off.